Can you maybe tell me which were the challenges that you were talking about first as the issues without the solution? Because I guess you also talked about the solution already. Guys want to go?
Talking about participation in DAO governance.
Mm-hmm. And what about the participation?
Not a lot of participation. This is the problem.
Okay, so low participation in governance. And that is in terms of like maintaining the members over time, or low participation in general, and the difficulty to motivate the members to vote at all.
Yeah, I think over time, and not just voting, also participating and
Okay.
coming up with proposals, commenting.
Okay, so we have like the engagement and discussions and ideation, suggesting something new, and then also voting. Okay, cool. And what did you talk about? Your group?
We were talking about missing incentives to participate.
Okay.
Because you only have kind of cost in terms of transaction fees or just following time to follow discussions and spend them. You don't necessarily have a return for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even just like even holding the governance token is maybe you could rather convert it to ETH and stake it, and that would be financially the better option.
Okay. Cool. So we both, like you both are talking about really participation and engaging the members and like maintaining the participation within the voting process. Luckily, Snapshot is free. So no transaction fees, which is actually one of the good incentives for the users, because there is nothing malicious that can happen. They're just signing a message. They're not paying anything. What we can do, we can chat about it later when it comes to different solutions that are possible when it comes to the low participation. But actually, there are also other problems around governance that we've seen, starting, for example, with spam, which can be also quite a big discouragement for the members, because whenever they go onto your space profile on Snapshot, they only see some random proposals that just have actually also scam links inside. So users are being discouraged from even reading the proposals. Voter apathy, not really interested in voting. We also have the whales, who are also discouraging the community to take part in the vote if the community members know that there is someone who owns majority of the token. They don't even want to vote, because what is the point if that one person can come in and just overrule the entire proposal? Then we also have staking. While, as you said, maybe it actually makes more sense to stake the tokens I hold. There are also solutions on Snapshot that allow you to counteract that, because we can check how many tokens the user have staked and then calculate their voting power based on that. So actually, you can have both. Then we also have delegation. Who to delegate to, how can I do it, how the voting will go, what if I actually want to take part in a specific proposal. We also have bots that are basically overruling the proposal. So basically, whales create hundreds or thousands of addresses and split their tokens, and then they automate the entire process. And lastly, exactly what we talked about, the low participation. So then, when it comes to the governance customizations on Snapshot, there are several ways you can actually address all of those problems. And each space can basically create their own very unique setup depending on their needs. And the 3 building blocks that I wanted to show you are voting strategies, validation strategies, and voting types. Where voting strategy is basically a tool that tells you how much voting power do you have, and also enables you to actually use the delegated tokens from another user for the proposals. In technical terms, it's just a JavaScript function that takes an address and returns a number. Then we have validation strategies, which basically check if a user is eligible to either create a proposal or cast a vote. And this is actually really useful because you may, for example, limit the proposal creators to specific users, to specific members that have a specific experience or have a specific role in your DAO or have a specific amount of tokens or have been a member of your DAO for, I don't know, at least 6 months. Then we have the voting types. Basically, voting types are the voting systems that you see on different proposals, which allow you to say that I only want to have a question in the proposal, and then I vote yes, no, or abstain. The other solution would be, for example, multiple choice voting, where you can provide different options the user are voting for. We also have quadratic voting, weighted voting, plenty of those. And the voting types are actually defining how the final result of the proposal is calculated. What we require at this moment is a combination of at least one voting strategy and proposal validation strategy due to recent scam and spam attacks, which went from Twitter or X to Snapshot, where there are plenty of new proposals with a lot of malicious, scammy links that were redirecting users to other domains and also inviting them to sign a transaction. So, when it comes to the most common solutions, you probably know them yourself. The crown jewel is our ERC20 balance off, which is a voting strategy that allows you just to provide the token address, and it returns the amount of tokens that you hold in your wallet, and this is then your voting power. We also have whitelist, which is taking as an input a list of addresses that will all have one voting power. You can check for ETH balance. You can also use NFTs to vote, and so on. And as you can see, they are quite popular, as, for example, ERC20 is in over 10,000 spaces on Snapshot. However, what we want to talk about are actually specific use cases. And we'll start from the Sybil resistance, so basically the way to avoid scams, the spam, and also make sure that your voters are not bots, but they are actually genuine humans. And what you can do for that is to use validation strategies. And what we provide on Snapshot at this moment are mainly two strategies. One is the basic one, where what you can do, you can take the set of the voting strategies that you're using to calculate the voting power, and just say the minimum balance for this user to vote or create proposals has to be 20. What you can also do with that is to select the custom selection of the voting strategies different than you use for the voting power, and create the setup for the validation separately. Then what we also have the Gitcoin passport validation, which is now being updated to the Gitcoin score validation, which is actually the stronger proof of Sybil resistance, where you check for the score of each user that you can set at whatever level you wish to define. And the validation strategies, as I said, can be used for proposal validation and the voting. Then we have voting strategies, and what we have is a whitelist, which is the easiest way to define who can vote, and you basically have a selection of your members that provide your addresses, and you set them up in the strategy. The other option is a membership, which is based on an NFT. If a user holds specific NFT, they will receive one voting power. And then when it comes to managing the different responsibilities in your space, you can also use space roles in your space settings and define admins who will be able to change the settings of your space, moderators who are responsible for managing the proposals and, for example, flagging a proposal if they see that it has malicious content. And then you also have authors that are the users that are eligible to create the proposals without meeting any specific requirements. You just provide their address. What is also useful when it comes to the Sybil resistance and like monitoring what is going on, you can use webhooks that we provide that you can get for the new proposals and for the ended proposals. So if you want to keep an eye on what's going on in your DAO, it's actually really good to set it up. The other solution would be also to set a Discord bot, which will notify you in the channel, like, hey, new proposal, check it out. And then you can ask also your moderators to have a look to make sure that the space is clean of scam. Also, if you have any questions, you can like raise your hand, let me know. Then, talking about the whales and the voter apathy, the discouragement because there is someone who can just overrule the entire proposal, we also have ways to act against that. First off is the quadratic voting, which is one of the voting types that then is calculating the result of the proposal. It is not, however, exactly the same as the Gitcoin quadratic funding. It's a bit more sophisticated in a way where it comes to the democratic process of voting. And if you want to have a look at it, that's a QR code to our documentation with a bit longer explanation showing you the real example of like various users, different options, the tokens they hold, so you can follow the process throughout. And what matters here is that we really care for the amount of users that are taking part in the voting rather than their holdings. And as I said before, whales can also do a trick of creating hundreds or thousands of accounts and then setting up a bot that will basically take their entire holdings and vote as 1,000 different addresses. Quadratic voting, perfect, they got what they wanted. So in order to make sure that this is not possible, you should be able to set it up with the voting validation that will check for the Sybil attacks and make sure that the addresses are not the bots, but actually they are most probably human. The other thing, we also have our voting strategies, where there is a specific anti-whale strategy, again, explained in the documentation, a bit more difficult setup, but it allows you to set specific threshold above which the voting power will be decreased and below which the voting power will have more significance in the voting process. There is also a strategy called balance off with thresholds, which basically mean that you can set buckets. And if someone holds up to 5 tokens, their voting power will be 0. From 5 to 10, their voting power will be 1. And from 10 to infinity, their voting power will be 2. So even if the whales are holding large amounts of token, their voting power will be really, really small. And then we also have voting privacy with shielded voting. This is one of the options that you can select in the space settings. I'll talk about it in a second. But the idea is that basically, while the proposal is going on, no one can see what is the current result and who voted what. The votes are private until the proposal has ended, and then anyone can release it. So basically, when a whale comes to a proposal, they don't really know if their vote will really change the outcome. So not fully secure when it comes to anti-whale strategies, but can also be useful in this case.
Shielded voting works with, for example, all kind of validation strategies?
As well, yes. It's a separate kind of module. Shielded voting, all it's doing is encrypting the votes on the IPFS, so no one knows what the user has voted, what is the current result. And at the same time, this address can be checked if they have enough of voting power. So if you want to go into the details, if you know that the validation is actually set at, I don't know, like you need to hold 50 tokens, and if you follow these addresses that voted, you can figure that they are eligible. But they can work all together, no problem. So, shielded voting, what I just mentioned, hide the voting results while the proposal is live, and then release it after the proposal has ended. How to do it? You go to the space settings, voting section, then select privacy, and then you can select the option with shutter, which will then lead to a proposal where you only see the addresses or the ENS domains, but you don't see the results at all. Then, what I also wanted to show you is something we released recently, which is a space handbook, which is basically like a Bible of how to use Snapshot for different use cases, and we're still building it up and developing it. As you can see, what we have here as well is, for example, liquidity and staking pools. So what we have are the voting strategies where you can provide the addresses of the vested stake tokens and basically read the amount that user really owns. They don't own them at, in a specific moment. They have them somewhere, but they can still use it to vote. So maybe actually the real problem is that the members don't know about it. They don't know it's possible. So a key issue is actually communication and letting your members know what is possible and how their votes can be actually counted. If there are any other use cases, if your organizations have any other needs, it is also possible to create your own solution, be it voting strategy or a validation strategy. And here you have a link to the documentation. I'll share the slides in a second. And currently we have over 450 different voting strategies on Snapshot, which basically allows you to do anything when it comes to the voting power. And the tool is very flexible. Same goes for the validation. If you have a very specific use case, which is not covered by the basic validation, which takes into account the voting strategies, or is not covered by the Gitcoin passport, it's also possible to create that. So from the slides you have the links here. Also, the QR code leads you to the slides if you want to have a look at that. And do you have any questions, or do you have any other ideas or solutions to the problems you defined before that you haven't seen covered here? There we have a mic if you wanna. We didn't take it before.
Okay. So regarding spam, you mentioned validation, and then for us, it still doesn't solve it. We don't want to have like just a specific set of users being able to set proposals, and token amount threshold is not solving it either, because you still, if you want to have like good spam protection, you have to set it very high. We don't want to do that, and even that allows spammers to just buy enough tokens and post anyway. And then another solution that we thought of is essentially having 2 stages for a proposal. One that is kind of hidden from the main space, but still allows to gather kind of a minimum amount of participation or support. And then if a minimum amount of support is achieved, then it becomes like a fully fledged proposals and goes into the main space with regular voting.
Okay, so you do it on a kind of like a subspace or a separate space to kind of have a temperature check?
We don't do it at the moment. It's something that we would wish to have.
Okay. So this might be actually possible in the future. Currently, what you can do is to have subspaces linked to your main space. And one space might be used for like the temperature check, open validation. Anyone can create it. So you may experience a lot of spam, but then actually you can take those proposals that had a lot of interest and duplicate them. There is like a function where you can just duplicate it to the main space, which is like the actual voting.
Actually, we are using subspaces for something else, and I don't think it will solve the spam problem because everything from the subspace is showing on the main space. So you still get the spam problem. One thing that you can do, we had this problem with Lido,
because they are basically the kings and queens of spam proposals, like 10, 20, 30, 100 daily. And what we did right now is that one address can only create, I think, can have 10 active proposals at a time, so at least one address cannot create that many. A space can only have also a limited amount of active proposals at a time. So maybe what we can do specifically for you, is to limit the number of active proposals for space directly in the code base. So then you know that you only want to have a specific number only when they pass. Then someone else will be able to create a new one. One thing that you can do is to basically, what you can do when you go to your space settings is when you click on the filter there, you can display all the proposals, because by default we are not showing the proposals we flagged, and we have an automated and a manual system for doing that. What you can see here is basically when the proposal is flagged, you only see the warning that it may contain something malicious or spam, and basically only if you click show, you will go and see the content. How to do it, you can go to a proposal and then report it here. And soon we will also have a feature that will allow the admins of the space to flag directly. So that might be quicker, and then basically they will not pop up on the main space. And if you set a webhook system or a Discord and you get notifications and have multiple users that can basically flag the proposals, then it might be easier. But the problem is, if you want to allow everyone to, to propose, it's not always that easy to avoid spam.
Yeah. Cool,
Would
thank
that
you.
be any helpful?
Not sure, because we don't have admins on our space. But
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
because they can change space settings, and we have a OSNAP module installed.
Yeah.
So it actually uses the space settings for execution validation, and we don't want people to be able to change the space settings.
Okay, got it. Then maybe we can consider another role, or allowing the moderators to flag proposals so that they won't have access to editing the space settings, but they can actually just click to flag something. And you can whitelist those. So maybe that's also another option.
Cool,
Good.
thank you.
Yep.
Just to add to that thread, I guess, have you guys thought about allowing a safe smart account or multi-sig to actually be the administrator?
It's already possible.
It's already possible.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bit more complex, and safe UI is not very intuitive when it comes to that, but we're also working on a solution that should enable easier management.
This is actually already the case for us, because the safe that is the owner of the ENS domain that is the space itself.
Yeah, thank you. I had another question about Snapshot to understand a bit how it works. So as I understand, it's all off-chain, right? You just read the blockchain data to get the balances. And I was thinking about your ERC20 balance of voting strategy. So as I understand you, it's not possible for you to implement any token locking. So is it possible that somebody maybe has, let's say, 10 accounts, and they have some amount of tokens, they vote from one account and then transfer them to the second account, they vote from the second account, and so on. So is it kind of a possible situation? Is it possible to mitigate this somehow? And have you thought about this?
What scenario are you talking about? Like,
so,
it's the whale like splitting their...
No, maybe it's not the whale. Maybe I'm just a user, I have 1,000 tokens, but I want to vote as if I have 10,000 tokens to inflate my voting power. So I just create 10 different accounts. I vote from the first account, I transfer them to the second, vote from the second, transfer them to the third, and so on. So I do this 10 times. But if I want, I can do this 100 times, I can do this 1,000 times, and there will be 1,000 different accounts voting with 10 tokens each, maybe. But yeah, in total, it will be quite a lot of voting power.
So this is actually not possible because we checked the balance of the tokens at the snapshot of the proposal creation.
Okay.
So basically, when you have the chain, the proposal was created here. Whatever happened afterwards, whether it's delegation, whether it's transfers, whether it's staking, whatever, is not taken into account. We only look at this specific point in time. That's why snapshot.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
No worries.
If that's the case, don't you get the problem that at the snapshot I may have some tokens, I use them to vote on a proposal, and then I kind of sell away my liability by moving the token somewhere else, since they're not locked in any way, right? They're just locked to the specific state at that moment.
That's completely fine. We don't want to interfere with your holdings and kind of judge what you're doing with it once you voted. The thing is that you should have the tokens before the proposal has been really posted. So you can't see the proposal and get the tokens. You hold the tokens first, and at the moment the proposal is created, we don't look at whatever else has happened later. So if you have the tokens, you vote and then you sell them, that's good for you if you made some profit. So
yeah, I was just thinking if that could introduce some misalignment, let's say, between the incentives of maximizing the token value, at that moment.
This is kind of out of our reach because we're just purely governance, not really DeFi. So.
Do you have any data on how many DAOs are using certain strategies, that kind of thing, like percentages? How many are just using the ERC20? How many are using a override? Is there anything is there a blog post or anything I can look at?
Yeah, actually, let me have a look if we have updated data. We have a dashboard on Dune, and there are a couple of other dashboards. Maybe I can just add them to the slides.
What's the Dune ID or user ID?
Dune is basically Snapshot Labs. That's our profile. And then also, if you search for Snapshot, that was one of the projects in the Aragon hackathon some time ago, and we had a couple of really good submissions with in-depth analysis of the usage of the voting strategies, the biggest DAOs, what's their setup, what's their participation, what's their number of their proposals, and so on. So a lot of good stuff to have a look at it. And as data is off-chain, it's not always up to date, but we're now trying to figure out a way with Dune to make sure that we update it on a regular basis.
And another question, is there any talk about so most people use the Governor Bravo contract, right? But the token contracts themselves have different events that are emitted when delegations take place, and there's no standard. Is there any talk about the standard events? And the problem there is, so if you're building a tool to index, delegations, those kind of things, voting power changes, it's really difficult because you almost have to treat each DAO, each token as its own thing. It's hard to build a tool at scale. Is there any talk about standardizing token events specifically? That's kind of niche.
So not at the moment. What is currently possible with delegation is to delegate through Snapshot. We have our own delegate registry contract, and also then you can set up a delegation with the contract that you have as your own organization. However, we are also working on Snapshot X, which is the on-chain voting solution, which will actually be reading the voting power through the indexer, which we're also building ourselves. And then it's highly modular, and basically you can also fork the repository. It's called, let me have a look. If we have it somewhere on the docs. If I can see it somewhere. There you go. Checkpoint, and you can basically fork the repo and either load it in basically import it in your own project or build on top of that, because this is also an open source tool, which we built first for Starknet, and then we are currently adapting it to be EVM compatible. So you can have a play with that.
Okay, thank you.
mic. The root of the mic is, I think, more optimal.
I would have one more question about like the general architecture. So as far as I understand, the voting happens off-chain, and so also the computation of the outcome happens off-chain.
Yes.
And could you say a bit about the architecture and how it's ensured that it's trustless or decentralized? Like in particular that no votes are left out and not considered, and the correct snapshot balances are considered?
Yeah, sure. So basically, as you said, the off-chain architecture is not on-chain, exactly. However, our infrastructure was built with the idea that basically it's censorship resistant. It's censorship resistant. Basically, anyone can have a look at what happened throughout the process. And what is going on is that currently you have the snapshot UI on the left side. When user casts a vote, the data with their signature goes to snapshot sequencer, which is kind of like the central hub of everything that is going on. And snapshot sequencer is verifying the signature, sending the address to our Score API. Score API is responsible for calculation of the voting power or the eligibility to vote. Basically, it can communicate with anything like a node, a subgraph, or an API, which can be unique to a specific DAO. Once we receive the data and the signature is verified, basically, Sequencer has its own private key. Once it's signed with a private key, we store it on IPFS, we store it on MySQL, and what we store there is the entire history of Snapshot. So anyone can actually fork our infrastructure and replay every single action taken from the very beginning of Snapshot. Every single new space, settings update, new proposal, a vote, delegation, and so on and so forth. You can also read the data from the Hub API directly. And basically, like, there is an entire article about that. So I would really recommend to go through that to understand like more details. But the goal is to decentralize it fully with Snapshot X, because we know that off-chain is not fully decentralized, it's not fully trustless. So we really want to make sure that anyone can know that this is basically out of our hands and it's all basically code.
Yeah, thanks. That explained it well.
Okay. Okay, last question, I guess, and we have a break.
Mine is a quick one. Just any news regarding Snapshot X and its release date, tentative?
Never ask about the release date.
I know.
It's coming. It's coming. It's actually already audited. If you go to our repository, if you go to Snapshot Labs, let me just do this. And you find the SX repos. Let me see if we publish it. We have SX Darknet, we have our UI, we have the APIs that will be available for everyone. Also, SX EVM, which is currently, so SX EVM has undergone an audit. So code freeze, all good. And now we are also building the solution for Starknet to have like really fast and cheap transaction fees on layer 2s. So it's coming soon.
Do you know if the SDK is final?
The SDK, we're still developing it. So it's kind of like, it's final for SXEVM, but we're gonna probably still change it due to the Starknet implementation. Because if you use the snapshot.js, SXJS is much more complicated to set up, depending on which, basically which network, which layer you're using. And we also don't provide currently the SXJS documentation, because simply it will still evolve. That's why that was the talk on snapshot off-chain, not yet on the on-chain, but the next talk should be probably on the on-chain voting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. All right. That's it. Thanks so much for joining. Also, if you have any questions, like, you can ping me, you can find me, you can join our Discord. And always happy to hear your feedback and like suggestions for whatever your needs are. Thank you.